welcome back, and as promised, today I am doing a video on the best ways to plot. Most of you know that I cannot push the virtues of plotting enough. You know, I love a good plotting session, and it's one way to really get to grips with your story. It brings you closer to your story, closer to your characters and their motivation. You'll begin to get an idea of how your book should flow, when it should dip down and when it should come rushing back up. Plotting is your best friend. Okay, now I know so many people are like, oh, but I like to freewheel it, I like to let my characters do what they want to do, I like to let them have free reign, I like to see how my story's going to come out. It's brilliant, good for you. Doesn't work for everybody. I don't stick rigidly to my plans. Not if my characters or the story demands that I go in a different direction or that I do a scene earlier than planned, but I always try to pull the story back to the plan as soon as I can. Okay, there's a number of reasons for this, but mostly because I don't want the story to go off track. I want to make sure that no major plot points are missed and to make sure that nothing messes up my flow or makes it too confusing. There are a number of ways to plot your book, but I'm going to show you some of the ones that I find to be the most helpful. First of all, I like to talk about my story. It helps me to get really excited about it. And if there are none of my lovely writing friends around and my daughter's like sick of me yapping on about it, I make use of my other best friend, my phone. Even if you don't know exactly where your story is going, this often helps me to think it through. I simply put my voice recording app on and I go for a drive or a walk in the woods and I talk. I know, me talking. Crazy, isn't it? Just like as if I was talking to a friend and telling them all about this like awesome movie that I watched the night before, or this book that I've just finished reading, and I tell them all about it. I tell them the plot from start to finish, and I find that this really helps when it comes to brainstorming and to planning out exactly how I want my story to go. It also means that I've got that first idea down physically somewhere. Now I can't lose it, because my brain's like a sieve with extra holes. It's really bad. I blame the fact that I've got a whole world up there, you know, and I've got a lot to think about and a lot to remember. Once I know where I'm going with the story, then I can start to make physical notes on it. Now here's where you can make things personal to you. These are a few ideas of how to plot that I got from writing class and I've worked with the people that were there. But again, you can do it however you want. All this video is doing is showing you some of the general ways to do it and the most popular ways. If you want to be you, you go ahead and be you, sunshine. It's all good. No one's going to judge you for it. Okay. Bullet points. Everyone loves a good bullet point, don't they? Bullet points are a really good way to get the basics down, especially if you're one of those people that likes to wing it a little bit and to work out the details as you go. If you can get all the major plot points down, then you're going to be fine. At least you know that you're not forgetting anything. And bullet points, they kind of work like a list, and I love a good list, don't you? It keeps you on track, you can tick things off as you go, and it just makes you feel so motivated. The mind map, you know, where you have like your main focus in the middle and loads of little off shots of everything that you want to include in your novel and when, along with little details about your character, places, history, all of that sort of stuff. Mind map. Or like a little bubble chart. I think I used to call them bubble charts at school. I think that was where I went with it. Don't think I ever called it a mind map, but hey, I'm old. The acts. That's where you write a small synopsis for each act of your story. And the synopsis, which is where you write down everything that you want in your story. Basically, a small condensed version of the story. And then you've got my way, which I like to call the detailed mega plot. This is my preferred method, obviously, because I usually see the entire story in my head from the moment I think about it. It like pops up, almost fully formed in there, and it stops me in my tracks when I have to get it out of my head and down on paper, ASAP, so that I can actually continue with whatever I'm currently working on. I cannot think to continue writing a story that I'm already in the middle of if a new one's popped in my head. I has to get it out. It's got to go. It's got to go in there. And the thing is, I know that if I wrote just a general little idea and just a tiny little snapshot of it, I'm going to lose most of the good plot points and most of the bits and pieces that made this idea really fantastic and attractive to me in the first place. So, you know, it's what you do. My method is to get a notebook, a nice fresh clean notebook, doesn't everyone love that, just for that novel. Okay, and I generally follow a basic formula for my story, which I will explain later, and then I get plotting. I write down everything, every scene that I see in my head, every plot point, telling the story from start to finish. I vary from bullet points to full sentences, paragraphs, sometimes just I scribble whole scenes, because sometimes it's a couple of big scenes or little bits that come up that is what makes the story so in my face and so prominent in my mind. I like to be able to write down any ideas that pop in, any details about characters, any backstory that comes out, and details like their physical characteristics, their accents, their style, all of that sort of thing. And all of this helps me to immerse myself in the story and to get to know my characters. One of the reasons that I like to have a whole notebook per story is the fact that quite often when I'm writing, I'll get another little idea pop in, or the characters will tell me something that I didn't know to start off with, and I have to write it down. And I know that if I wrote it down on little scrap bits of paper everywhere, I would lose that shit in about 2 fucking seconds. So if you've got a notebook for it, everything to do with that story goes in that notebook. And then you know that everything is all in one place, and you're going to be able to find it very quickly when you need it. What I also like about doing them is because I'm writing a series, I find that obviously I've got so much to think about in there. A lot of my stories kind of interweave with each other, and the stuff that's happened in other books is going to be relevant in later books. I need to make sure that I am not fucking up my own timeline. I need to make sure that I know everything that was going on in my books and in my world. And having notebooks for it, I can go, oh, so this happened in Nikos and Tansi's book, I think. I'm just going to go and check that and check my plot points to make sure that I'm not messing up or forgetting something vitally important. Notebooks. Writer's best friend. Okay, so now we have our plotting methods. Obviously there are other ones out there, but these are just the ones that I was taught, so I stuck with them. Now we're going to work on the story. I've gone into more details in my video of story construction, so I'm just going to touch on them very briefly. Every good story can be split into 3 acts. Act 1 is the setup. You're setting the stage. You're showing the reader who the protagonist is, what their life is like, and what's important to them. You should also show a hint of what will be their issues or their ultimate goal, the inciting incident. This is the catalyst that sets the story in motion. It could be the death of someone close to them, losing a job, moving house, or starting a business. The first plot point. This will be the moment when your protagonist decides that they must do something to fix this problem they have. Now, after that, it's full steam ahead to Act 2. Act 2 is all about confrontation. It usually comprises the second and the third quarters of your novel. The first part will be all about the rising action. This is the part of the story where the protagonist is in hot pursuit of their goal, so it begins to take form, and then they encounter a roadblock. The protagonist is starting to get to know their new surroundings and to start to understand the challenges that lay before them. It's also the part of the story where the reader can get to know the supporting cast of your story, both friends and foes, including the primary antagonist. Midpoint, and a significant event must happen, usually something going horribly wrong. Plot point number 2, and at that moment where your protagonist is at their lowest ebb and they don't know that they can continue, but it's your job to drag them back up again, kicking and screaming if you have to. You have to give them a reason to fight, and to fight hard. Okay. Act 3, resolution. You usually have the pre-climax. Sounds annoyed, doesn't it? I'm afraid it's really, really not. This is where you're making plans to go take on the bad guy, to triumph over adversity, to win back their lost love. Whatever their goal is, they are ready to fight. They are ready to lay their smack down on this big ass problem. Climax, the final battle, the final hurdle, the moment of truth, and your hero is triumphing. It might look like they're about to lose, but somehow they will make it through. And lastly is their moment of reflection. The dust settles and we get this lovely glimpse of how life's going to be after this major catastrophe. Your ending needs to be satisfying for your reader and rewarding for your hero. So there we are, we've plotted. Now all you've got to do is get on with the writing. Go on, go off and do it. I hope this helped in some way. As always, if you have any questions or video requests, then just hit me up. And until next time, blessed be and happy writing.